seizure-free for a month.
Okay, I think we're ready to go. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 17th, 2021 Board of Selectmen's regular meeting. We'll start with our roll call. Candace?
Candace Bouchard?
Todd Archulashi.
Melissa Bird.
Josh Kelly.
Stephen Sedlak.
Sheila Sedlak.
Jack Bork.
Linda Grappo.
And I will tell you that our mayor is absent excused this evening, unavailable to attend. So that's why I'll be chairing the meeting. Please join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 is agenda review. Is there anything we need to do with the agenda, adding or changing? Hearing none, we'll move on to number 4, approval of minutes, starting with the regular meeting of May 3rd. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Melissa. Is there a second? Thank you, Todd. Any discussion of these minutes? If not, let's have the vote. All in favor? It's unanimous. Minutes of the annual town budget meeting of May 10th, 2021. Is there a motion to accept?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Linda. Is there a second? Candace, thank you. Any discussion of these minutes? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? It's unanimous. Item number 5, citizens' comments. Step up to the microphone if you would.
Good evening, John Wayard, 16 Superior Street. I talked to Bob at some point, maybe in December. He said he had seen cars over at the Bank of America using the charging stations. I went by today because I had to go to Pearson School, and there were 2 cars hooked up and charging. I appreciate that.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks, John. Anyone watching who would like to call in, now is the time to do it. It's 860-738-6958. We'll allow a few minutes for call-ins. And if not at this time, there'll be a second period of comment later in the meeting. So if you're not calling in now, please call in later if you'd like. Moving on to item number 6, town manager's report.
Thanks, Steve. Good evening, everyone. In front of you, members of the Board of Selectmen, you'll see a brief summary of my activity for the last 2 weeks. For those of you who are following along on the cable channel or who have an opportunity to access the internet, you can find this online with the board packet. I'll go through a few highlights from the last 2 weeks, and then I'll open it up to any questions or comments that members of the board have. On the week of May 3rd to May 7th, so not this past week, but the one prior, I did attend the Western Region Annual ERP meeting. That's a meeting with Eversource where they're evaluating some of their emergency response policies, and I'm happy to say that a number of our members of our emergency response team did attend, and I'm also happy to say that Eversource is taking a much more proactive stance when it comes to trying to respond to municipal crises, as happened with Hurricane Isaias this past summer. There was an emergency roundtable on opioids. I know that some of you, or I had the chance to talk about that a little bit 2 weeks ago with that Board of Selectmen meeting. But since that meeting, I've had the opportunity to go through and meet with Mayor Carbone and the Economic Development Director in Torrington. I did have the opportunity to speak with Todd a little bit more about opioids and activities that Winchester has taken on in terms of trying to address the opioid crisis. I have attended and will continue to do my best to attend Economic Development Commission meetings. I know that that's been certainly a hot point of conversation with so many businesses opening in town and a lot of very promising news on that front. So I hope to keep the energy going and the momentum up. I've had the opportunity to meet with different members of the staff, including the Director of Public Works regarding incoming road projects. Certainly, we're joined tonight by our Director of Finance, Bruce Stratford, who can speak to the fact that we have been evaluating our collection software, and there have been multiple meetings held on that subject, both 2 weeks ago and in the past week on that subject. There was a ruling, so that you're all aware, on the solar project at Platte Hill by the Siting Council. That was authorized. That project will be moving forward as per the ruling of the Siting Council. That's a state-level council, not something that is run by the town. I've had the opportunity to continue to have my one-on-one conversations with different members of the town staff. As you're all aware, over the past several weeks, I first met with all the directors, all the department directors across the town's administration, and now I've had the opportunity to start to meet other supervisors, other members, deputy directors, and the like, and I'll continue down, as I've said before, until I've had the opportunity to sit and meet with everyone. Beyond that, I've had the opportunity to attend a Northwest COG meeting, my first one, where I was introduced by the mayor, and I have now had the opportunity to have a tour of all of the, as Jack Bork can say, the YMCA just today, but the fire departments, the various fire departments around Winchester. And I had the opportunity, I think 3 weeks ago now, to see the Winchester Fire Department. So my onboarding continues. Obviously, there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of history that I'm still getting into my head. And I have appreciated having everybody's support in making those connections and getting that information readily available. But certainly, there's a lot of activity within the town, not only in my office and from me, but throughout all of the different departments and department heads. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have about town activities.
Josh, on the solar project and the approval, nothing was changed on what the state decided, the city council, as it was originally presented to us. There was no major change in what's happening up there. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
That was your note regarding Lodestar Energy.
Yes, I did meet with Lodestar Energy.
Okay.
And I will also say, in the last 2 weeks, we did receive guidance, and I'll speak to this a little bit more later. I did receive guidance from the federal government on how money from the American Rescue Plan will be able to be spent. There's still a lot of information coming out about that. It was a very dense 150-page document outlining the various uses for those funds, and a number of different agencies, including CCM, are trying to put together a summary of the permitted uses. And there was a roundtable last Friday with Senator Murphy and Governor Lamont in Torrington that I had the opportunity to attend regarding broadband access in northwestern Connecticut, specifically surrounding affordability and high-speed internet access, both of which I feel were lacking here in Winchester, and that I'll continue to work on as I'm able.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to item number 7, the Finance Director's Report. Bruce, would you like to join us?
So good evening, everyone. In your packet was the general fund activity report, revenues and expenditures versus budget through April 30th, 2021, which represents 83% of the fiscal year. Some highlights from the report include our property tax collections are at $24.2 million, which represents 100% of our budget. And a similar percentage was achieved last year at this time. As always, I appreciate the taxpayers for their timely payments, especially this year under difficult circumstances. Total revenues are at 98% of budget, which was a similar percentage as last year, so we're tracking very similarly to last year. Significant municipal aid from the state received this month included the final ECS installment of $3.9 million. As expected, we also received another installment on the Pequot Mohegan grant for $16,000. Total expenditures through 10 months are at $26.8 million, or 78% of the budget. We were at 76% of the budget last year. Again, the expenditures are tracking as we expect. You will have some budget transfer requests to review and hopefully approve later on in the meeting. And we will continue to present you with some of those at the next two meetings. We'll especially take a very hard look at the end of May and be able to present some other budget transfer requests. But I think we're looking very good about being within overall budget in terms of expenditures by the end of the year. Our cash flow results, we had $18.7 million in cash at April 30th. $11.1 million was invested, which produced a modest amount of interest income. And with respect to capital improvements, the Hinsdale Renovation Committee is continuing to meet and approve invoices as they relate to the architect's planning. We have not yet seen any invoices from the contractor. They're just getting started, but we've already received a reimbursement from the state for over $600,000 of architect fees incurred on the project since the referendum was approved. So that concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Any?
Okay,
Thank you.
I will be here for some other agenda items later on.
Okay, thank you. Bruce. Looks like we're in good shape. Item number 8 is correspondence. Any comments there? Hearing none, go on to item number 9, which is boards and commissions. You have in your package two items for some action. You have a letter of interest from Alan Calavecchio and Economic Development Commission. And you have an email expressing interest in the ZBA from Ronald Dew. This afternoon, Linda and I had a chance to meet with Josh and with Terry Hall, and we discussed a lot of issues around boards and commissions. I'll speak to that in just a second, but one of the things we talked about was here we have some people who are well-known and by reputation and by performance in the community in the recent past and currently. And, you know, should we use our regular 3-step process of vetting, or should we just use a 2-step process because these are community members well-known to all of us? So I'll just throw that out to you for a second and see if you have any comment on that. In other words, are they ready for nomination at this meeting, or do we put in our 3rd step of doing, you know, extended vetting?
I feel like we would do 2 steps as a personal.
I can't hear you, Melissa.
I think we would move ahead and nominate, in my opinion.
Okay, hearing no other, I'll exercise a little authority here and say, I believe in this instance and in similar instances, we're well within reason to put these names into the official nomination step. And so for that reason, I will move that we nominate Alan Colavecchio as a member of the Economic Development Commission as a permanent member and a term to expire in 2026.
I'll second.
Thank you, Todd. And we'll take action on that after further vetting at our next selectmen's meeting. And for the same reason, I will nominate Ronald Dew as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals as a permanent member, term to expire in June of 2026. Thank you, Linda, for the second. So both of those will be voted upon at our next meeting.
Steve, my only comment on, and I have no problem with you, your suggestion. It's very interesting. We have an application for appointment to a board commission filled out by Alan. That's one of the first times I think I've seen this form filled out. And the second one, Ron did not. I think just we should be consistent with either we're going to have that form used or we're not going to have it used, or we're going to bypass it. I think just consistency of, if the form is there, let's use it. If not, what difference does it make?
Yep, I agree with you, and thank Linda for assistance in getting the more formal-looking application into the hands of Alan Colavecchio, so that could be filled out. And that would be our intention, that in the future, all applicants would use the same form. Okay, we're set on that. And just one other item to discuss, and it will take some further research. There was a question this afternoon about members of boards and commissions being not only residents, but being voters, registered voters. Is that in everyone's recollection that that's a requirement?
I believe so. They have to be a voter. You have to know the party, because that's part of the requirement of making sure there are balanced boards, so that there's not a quorum, too many of one party and the other. That's an underlying, we don't have that issue, and now we're seeing more people that are not necessarily Republican or Democrat, but they're unaffiliated. So, but there should be a party identification. Every form that you'll see in every town requests that.
Okay, good. I'm glad, and that's consistent with what I believed,
Right.
but I just wanted to check that out with all of us.
Well, it also helps because then they literally are a resident. That's part of the problem where we have people that have been applying that want to volunteer, but they rent, and they don't have a car registered here. So, they have to, in some cases, you have to own property. In some cases, just a registered voter and a resident, so.
Okay, well, good. That will be part of our vetting process to make sure that all of those who are interested in boards and commissions are not only residents, but also registered voters.
Does that
Okay.
apply to every single board commission?
Pardon?
I thought there were some boards and commissions that you didn't have to be a voter.
Some of them were like the Charter Revision Commission, things like that, which are not, more the land use boards, the ones that are in the charter. So, we can get clarification, but it's unique in EDC. In some towns, they require that you have $1,000, have $1,000 worth of property in the town. We don't have that stipulation. But if you look at other forms that other towns fill out, they do identify that. Some of them, like the Board of Appeals, they'll ask you, what's your opinion of boards of appeals, which is really kind of important, especially since that controls revenue coming into the town or taxes. So,
Well, it's so hard to get volunteers sometimes. We don't want to put a lot of roadblocks in front of them. And if somebody's willing to step up and, I don't know, maybe they decided they didn't want to vote, but they were paying taxes. I don't know, should that stop them from being a volunteer?
we'll have to see. But it's always, if you look in every town, it identifies all the parties that are there. So it doesn't mean you have to be, Republican or Democrat, but you should be a registered voter. It doesn't mean you have to vote.
Well,
so.
we know that.
So when I started by saying I think we need some more research, those are the kinds of things I'm talking about, because there's the charter, there's state statute,
Exactly. This
there's
is-
bylaws, there's a number of things that govern all of these issues, and it takes time to go through them. So I want to commend both Josh and Terry Hall for kind of bringing us to the table and looking at ways that we can streamline the database of volunteer names that we have, do a better job of knowing when the terms expire, and so they've done quite a bit of work already, and they're looking forward to sort of sifting out and making sure that some of the boards and commissions that are less active, why are they less active, what is the mission there, and doing those kinds of things. So they're right on top of it, and I think it's going to be helpful to us in the long run. So, good job.
And now to get real volunteers.
And now to get volunteers. And Jack, your name came up as one who is a good recruiter. Okay, I think we're ready for item 10, which is new business. We have a number of things to go through here, and I'm going to let you take the lead on all of these.
Very good. So, item number 10A, or I suppose it's listed as number 21-19 in your packets, is new business, appointment of special town meeting / referendum moderator. And as you'll recall, we do have another special town meeting that's coming up, as well as referendum scheduled for later this month. Now, we had our annual town meeting just last week, and at that annual town meeting, Debbie Angel served as moderator. This action was taken, I believe, just a few weeks back by the Board of Selectmen to appoint her as such, and it's recommended that for the upcoming special town meeting, that Debbie Angel be appointed as moderator once again.
May I have that motion, please?
So moved.
Okay, Candace, you beat Linda by 1/10 of a second. You have the motion, Linda, you have the second.
I think we should just, again, for the public record, to say what the special town meeting is for. This is for the decision on the $6,200,000 cost related to the replacement and improvement of water mains and water storage tanks. And as we have said in the past, this does not affect taxes. It's all being paid for through the water and sewer, the water department. Just so that when we say a special town meeting, I think we should just identify what that town meeting is for.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jack.
And
Bruce,
is it-
are you going to comment on this particular item? Okay, just getting ready for the others, thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second to appoint Debbie Angel. Let's have a vote, all in favor, and it's unanimous. All right, 10B,
Yes, 10B, or in your packet number 21-20. This is a proposed line item transfer, a few that all pertain to really the same issue at hand. In the town manager's office, we have had two different positions turn over, both positions, my own, of course, as I came on board and Bob Geiger left, and then that of currently Terry Hall's. And there was a bit of overlap in each of these cases. In order to support the salary that increase that has occurred as a result of that slight overlap between myself and Bob and then Terry and her predecessor, and as well as, or that has caused a few different changed needs, as you'll see here. So there's an increased need for salaries, there's an increased need for fringe benefits, and there's actually a decreased need for medical, as some of the new staff coming in won't actually need medical insurance for the time being. So we have an opportunity here to move money around to cover those deficiencies. And Bruce, I don't know if you want to speak any further on this
I think you
transfer.
did that very well, yeah.
But it's our recommendation that the transfers be made as presented.
Okay.
Just the one thing, we're taking some dollars from the selectmen's department budget to supplement the town manager's budget. It's not a great deal, it's $1,000 from a line item that has no expenditures against it yet, so it should be sufficient.
Okay, understood. May I have that motion, please? Jack, thank you. And is there a second? Thank you, Melissa. Is there further discussion? All right, hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? It's a unanimous vote. Okay, new business C?
Absolutely. Bruce, while you're up here, would you like to speak to this? Or
Yes, so, as you know, we finalized a police union contract earlier this year. It included some retroactive pay increases. We made those pay increases we made those payments in April, end of March and in April. And so, in order to supply some additional budget funds to the police department accounts that are impacted, we're proposing that $91,000 be taken from the unnegotiated settlements line item in Department 910 and to be allocated to 3 payroll accounts in the police department as indicated.
Okay, could I have that motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Candace. And a second from?
I'll second.
Thank you, Todd. Further discussion?
This was all accounted for anyway, there's nothing new here. That's the amount that was anticipated with the 2% negotiated settlement.
Well, the police contract guy gave the police a 2.5% increase for their first year, which was actually the fiscal year 20. So every officer got a 2.5% retroactive pay calculation for that fiscal year. And then it was a 2.25% increase for this fiscal year. And so we did that in the second payment to the police in April. So it accounts for those first 2 years of increases in the new contract, the retroactive portion.
I have a question. Is there money left in unnegotiated settlements, and do we have other contracts under negotiation?
So the police contract was the only one that had expired and needed to be renewed in order to be, to account for compensation of those employees through the end of this fiscal year. The other union contracts are all still in force until June 30th of this year. And so the budget dollars that we had calculated for those, each of those departments was based on the existing contracts. So we don't anticipate to have to do any other retroactive payments as a result of a new contract. There is $4,000 left in the unnegotiated
Yeah.
settlement account after this transfer.
I just think we don't want to totally deplete it if something's still underway negotiation-wise.
That account was budgeted primarily to account for this eventuality.
Yeah.
We knew we didn't have a contract when we built the fiscal '21 budget, and we had to allow for something to take care of the retroactive pay increases.
All right, very good. Other questions or comments for Bruce? Josh? All right, hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. And item D, a bid waiver for Soldiers Monument.
I can leave this entirely up to you, Bruce, if you'd like.
Okay, so the Soldiers Monument has undertaken a window replacement project, and please correct me, Jack, if I misspeak here. It's a major project, and so you have to go to a specialty contractor, because these are special windows. And the Soldiers Monument Commission has selected a contractor, a vendor, to provide, I think, not only the actual materials, but also to do the installation. And the commission is desirable to use what remaining funds they have in the capital improvement budget for windows, plus some monies that are already in the Soldiers Monument Restoration Fund, which is our Fund 154. So they're asking for a bid waiver request to go with this particular contractor because of their specialty work on this kind of construction or renovation. Is that accurate, Jack? Okay, so our Mark Douglas, our purchasing agent, has written a letter in support of this. This bid waiver is in the amount of $122,051. And when you take into account what the commission has in the Soldiers Monument Restoration Fund, plus the amount that's been appropriated and still not encumbered in the Capital Improvements Fund, plus the expected appropriation of $25,000 as part of the budget referendum, capital improvement budget for May 29th, this amount is, would not use all of those funds.
Okay. All right, so, again, anytime a bid is going to be waived, the process is waived, you're looking for a reason like, why do we have to do this? And in this case, it would be the specialty requirements of the windows, and we have a history of working with Goulet Glass, I would assume.
It's Sullivan's Glass.
Sullivan's Glass. Goulet Glass, doing business as Sullivan's Glass, okay.
Okay.
All right, did I ask for a motion on this?
I'll make it.
Thank you. Motion from Jack, second from Melissa.
second.
Do we have questions and comments? Go ahead, Candace.
I have a question. When this is written up, why are we not identifying where the source of the funds are and how much? Because if I'm looking at a bid waiver for $122,000, and there's nothing in the capital improvement plan that identifies, you know, how much is in the capital improvement plan for the windows?
So they currently have some window work going on. Let me just check that for you.
Yeah, I know we
Hold
did
that.
the 25,000 for next year and 50,000 was this year, but did we have a starting number?
So the last 2 years of our capital improvement budget has each included a $50,000 appropriation, totaling $100,000. There has been $19,000 spent on that through April. There's another $14,000 in encumbrances, and which leaves an unencumbered balance of $66,000. The Soldiers Monument Restoration Fund has $34,014, so it's about $48,000. So 66 and 48 is 110,
And then we have the 25.
and then
for
the
next
25
year.
that is
Okay.
in
So-
the budget.
So my concern with the way
Proposed.
this was written up, it didn't show the source of the funding and the identification of, you know, you're asking for a bid
Part of
waiver.
it was, Candace, when I wrote the letter asking for the waiver, we were still uncertain about how much money was in each of these accounts to be able to say, the waiver is so that we go out to bid, but where the money will come from is going to be the restoration account.
No,
which-
I understand. All I'm saying is, that should have been written in here because there's no source of funding, because that would put the town in the liability of a full 122,000 without identifying that there is another fund called 154 with a certain amount of money, and then, you know, what's remaining in the capital improvement line item, because I only see the line item. I'm not familiar with that.
Correct.
I'm just saying, you know, in the future, I think that's the way, I mean, especially if you want a bid waiver for $122,000. Those are my requirements, is that I want to know that the town's not on the hook for that. Now that I know that that's really all covered, I'm definitely good with
We
it.
had an extensive meeting with Bruce this afternoon, just to make sure that if this bid waiver is approved,
Right.
we can start the application, we can start we can start having Goulet order the glass now.
Right, no,
So the
I'm-
prices don't go up.
No, I'm not,
But we didn't know where exactly the
I
money.
know, but I don't think you should put a bid waiver without that information, I'm saying. We have the information now, but I think just going forward, something like that, which
Fair enough.
hopefully you won't have to do this again, so.
You still will approve it though, right?
I will approve it now that I've gotten the answers that I hope for, but,
All right.
thank you. Otherwise, I'd never approve bid waivers.
Okay, anything else on this question or comment? All right, if not, we're ready for a vote. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, next is municipal suspense tax list, item E.
Yes, and just to speak to this briefly, and Bruce, feel free to jump in if I don't do it justice, but you may all remember this from years past. Each year, the town tax collector requests of the Board of Selectmen that the Board of Selectmen approve the town suspense list. These are items that are, for one reason or another, not able to be taxed in the upcoming fiscal year, or with the upcoming grand list. You can look through the pages that have been included in your packet, and you'll find that, for the most part, the reasons listed are because we cannot locate individuals. There's no way to bill an individual if we cannot locate them. And in some cases, there are also instances where we can't bill ourselves because it's town-owned property. So in this case, there is a request that the amount of suspended taxes proposed for this coming fiscal year is $64,462.03. And it's recommended that the Board of Selectmen approve the town suspense list as presented.
Okay, we can discuss this further, but let's have the motion first.
So moved?
Thank you, Candace. Second from Linda, thank you. Discussion. These are the kinds of things we do annually, I believe.
Just so you know, we occasionally collect these taxes. They are not written off, they're just put in a suspended file, and we're not actively engaging outside resources or inside resources to collect it. Now, for instance, if a person who has a motor vehicle tax that wasn't paid, who had left town but then comes back into town and wants to register a new motor vehicle, well, we won't allow them to register without resolving their past tax liabilities. So occasionally we do get some of these collected.
Okay, other questions or comments?
Actually, Bruce, in the page that she also provided regarding the suspense history since 2009, this is right about the middle.
Right.
We've had over 100,000 suspended from last year, and then in 2016. So it's nothing but exceptional.
There's always something in this neighborhood of this amount, something around, between $50,000 and $100,000 that we're going to ask you for suspense. This allows the tax collectors to focus on what they can collect as opposed to, spending a lot of time on items that they really have very little chance of collecting.
Yeah. Okay, if we're set with discussion, let's have our vote. All in favor? And it's unanimous. Okay, refunds?
57.
Yes, so this is number 21-24 in your packet, and you'll remember, I can't remember if it was a meeting ago or perhaps two, but other refunds were issued at that time, and since then, our collector of revenue has determined that there's another $57.09 as a duplicate payment that was given by the individual listed within your packets, and it's recommended that the Board of Selectmen authorize a refund for this individual for the duplicate payment.
So moved.
Who was that, Todd? Okay, thank you. And a second from Melissa. Any discussion here? All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Next item, transfers.
Yes, so this is another transfer, both coming from and going to the recreation line. Bruce, I'm not sure about the rationale for this quite as well, I believe, as you are. Do you have an opportunity to speak to it?
Yes, so Tanya Rasucci, our Recreation Department Director, has determined that she has some surplus funds in the general labor line, and this is due to the fact that the COVID activities has greatly reduced the amount of really the lifeguarding expenditure, because they just don't have lifeguards who are available to serve when they would like the beaches open and lifeguards available, mostly because the lifeguards have school commitments. So she's seen that there's about $9,000 she's not going to be able to spend in that line item for labor, but she does have needs in the equipment and grounds area and would like to transfer that $9,000 to equipment for $5,200 and $3,800 to grounds maintenance.
Okay, who would make that motion? Jack, thank you. Who would second that? Oh, I saw your hand, Linda, before I heard your voice, Todd, so Linda gets it this time. Any discussion on this item?
Well, I'm concerned. To me, this sounds like we're not gonna have lifeguards.
I think you're going to have lifeguards, but not for every weekend during June.
Okay.
And they will, when they do have lifeguards, I think they're going to put them at one beach as opposed to try and open both beaches. I think otherwise, I believe it's swim at your own risk. The sign is up when lifeguards are not available.
Okay, anything else before we vote? All in favor? Unanimous. All right. Next item, 504 Main Street Building. Tell us about this, Josh.
Thanks. So the first thing I want to mention, and this is something that as I continue to grow into the role, I'll continue to play with the format of these agenda items until I find a format that speaks to my style and a presentation that I feel conveys my thoughts well. You'll note up at the top, usually it says Board of Selectmen Action Request. This is an agenda item summary, and I've changed the title as such because to specifically note that there's no recommended motion with this. This is a matter that's purely being brought up to you for discussion purposes, so that we can have the opportunity to do that in a total forum. So what I want to bring to your attention is, and this is based off of a lot of feedback that I've received from you, is that we have right now in our possession a number of different properties, some of which have buildings on them, some of which do not, some of which we've already earmarked for, or at least believe there to be certain utilities for, and some of which we haven't had any discussions on yet. What I would propose, given that this is an item, or this is a specific property at 508 Main Street that is in the heart of Winchester, that is a part of and has a capacity to really enhance the economic corridor here within our town, that we take the time to convene a group together to have in-depth conversations about what could and should be done with this building. 508 Main Street, just so that you're aware, and forgive me, I can't recall what it's immediately adjacent to, but it actually involves two different buildings, one of which has already been torn down. As you may remember, I believe it's near Kent Pizza down the street. And the building immediately adjacent to it is still standing, which is pictured on the sheet in front of you. The parcel includes both of those different buildings, did include both of those buildings, one of which has since been torn down. So my proposal to you is that an ad hoc committee be formed to begin my direction of no more than 12 individuals, the majority of whom would be staff members, including also a member of the Economic Development Commission, the owner of various businesses surrounding 508 Main Street, and a limited number of residents. The goal of this group would not be to make any decisions on the fate of the property, but to come up with a series of ideas, to explore those ideas, to come up to their logical conclusions, and ultimately to determine what the highest and best use of that property is. Once we've made our determination, that would be written up in a recommendation to you, where you would be, and not just that one recommendation, but the lot of our conversations would be summarized, brought to your attention for a final decision on how should this property be moved forward. And should this property be given an opportunity to have some higher use with the building standing, or perhaps an opportunity would be certainly, I know it's been said that perhaps it should be torn down and something new built there, or parking spaces placed on the site. But right now, we simply don't have enough information to make that determination, and I believe that the creation of this group would give us that information that we require. So this isn't so much, this isn't a request for the Board of Selectmen to make a subcommittee to discuss it, but rather to receive feedback from you as to whether you believe this is a good plan for moving forward, and if you would support such a venture that I'm taking.
So let's have the feedback. Linda, go ahead.
I think it's a great idea, but I'm wondering, do you have a time frame? Like, you organize this committee, are you talking 3 months, are you talking 6 months, a year? I think you need to have limits.
I agree. And I think that for the purposes of both this and the next agenda item that I'll bring to your attention, my goal is by the end of August to have a recommendation in writing to this group. So that would be approximately the next 3.5 months.
You'll
Yep.
get a committee formed, you'll meet, what, every week, every 2 weeks?
Every week or two.
And, okay.
I want to bring up the fact that we missed a process here, and this is because it's a blighted property. What really should have occurred before the building was demolished, it should have gone to planning and zoning, because there are percentages of, I don't know how to say this, you know, there are restrictions on building properties on different areas of the town, like how much land should be there and how much, a main street should never remove a building because it's supposed to be a continuous line of buildings. I only found this out recently, and that's actually in talking to Connecticut Main Street. But if we looked at this property for planning and zoning, after, you know, it was made available to the town, they may not have allowed us to remove that other building because there's a certain amount of land versus surface that's required for each building lot. So, you know, just saying, we have not come into this situation before with a blighted property. So we may have acted too quickly in that regard or missed a step, or it's just not part of our process. We have that process when we sell property, but not when it's blighted. So that's something that may come up in that meeting as well. But,
Well, Candace, following up on that, perhaps Josh should get at least one member from the Planning and Zoning Commission on this committee.
I think that would make a lot of sense. And for everybody's knowledge, I believe that the property was officially taken over by the town in March of 2020
Yes.
as part of the blight process.
Yes.
It's possible that perhaps there were some processes that were missed due to COVID.
right.
Not to make excuses, but I do think
it's-
that presents some
I don't think it's COVID.
explanation.
I think it's just we have a process for selling property, but not for blighted property that we own to decide what to do with it.
Right.
So, you know,
And I hope that this will be a part of it, and perhaps
I think
at
this is a
the,
great idea for this. yeah.
absolutely. At the end of this process, I'm sure that there will be hiccups along the way. I'm sure that there will be some more feedback from this group about how to proceed with further properties, and perhaps we even need to have further procedures to address this property in particular. But I hope that this will be a good first step.
Josh, the other thing I'd like to see this committee come back with, once they come back to us, if there are suggestions for what to do with it, for instance, if there's a suggestion to tear it down, what's the cost involved? Rather than just giving us a suggestion, but maybe the research of, well, what would it cost to have it torn down? Or if it's to be renovated, what is the cost? So that when we get the recommendation, we have some figures that go with it so that we can make some decisions.
Absolutely. We can make that happen.
But I don't know that we would renovate it. I don't know that, well, we'll see what comes. I don't think that we would be the renovators unless we decide that.
No, but we may decide to sell it at that point, but we have some cost benefits that we know what's available. I'm just looking for, rather than, yeah, the committee recommended tear it down. Well, what's the cost?
Well, they may not be allowed to because of the planning and zoning regulations.
But that's a whole different issue.
Exactly.
Isn't this the property that is historic? And didn't we try to sell this? Am I missing something? Did I?
We didn't try to sell
Or
it.
We never tried to sell it while we were in
they
office.
were going to, they saved this property because it had historical value?
I don't believe that's this property.
No?
I
Okay.
think we saved it because we didn't know what we were gonna do with it in the first place.
Okay.
And the other building, the little small one-story or two-story Italian, what
That
was
was
it?
just
Mexican
like-
pizza place?
Mexican grill.
It's parking now.
Yeah, well,
Are-
no,
There are apartments up above, and are they
no,
rented?
it's been vacant.
Okay.
Been vacant for about 3-5 years.
There's also another issue that when you go look at the property card, there's no information there. So things got wiped out, and so it'll get fixed.
Okay, it sounds like you're getting a big thumbs up on this.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't hear any other comment you want for Josh on that?
My only comment is thanks. Go ahead,
Good
get it
idea.
done.
Absolutely, thank you.
Take action.
And so the next item, similar in nature, the American Rescue Plan funds.
Yes, so this is number 21-27, if you're following along in the packet. And this is a very similar ad hoc group that I'd like to put together, comprised largely of town staff, but including several town residents, members of boards and commissions, et cetera, that would be formed to take a look at the $3 million that we expect to receive from the American Rescue Plan Act and determine what the highest and best use of that funding would be. At this time, as I said, there's about a 150-page document, correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, that's been put together to address what the uses, what the permitted uses are. Right now, it looks like a number of infrastructure projects are permissible. That includes, to an extent, roads, water, and sewer. That includes buildings to a certain extent. The opening of new facilities would be permissible, even the funding of some programs and some staff positions, depending on what they are and how they serve the community. The goal of the rescue plan funds is really to try and bolster the economy locally and try and really grow more social safety nets, especially in the health field. So at this time, there are so many different options and opportunities for the use of these funds that I believe we need to have a multifaceted approach in how we look at these funds being used. And similarly, no decision would be made as a result of this. This would purely be an advisory group that would help take a look at these funds, take a look at the guidance, come back to you with a proposal on how they believe these funds would be best used, provide you with information about alternatives, and ultimately allow you to be in the driver's seat.
More feedback for Josh?
Josh, when we saw this money coming in, there was an announcement that so much was going to be for the education and so much for the town. I don't see anybody here on this committee from the Board of Ed. Perhaps we need to have somebody from there also to keep that in mind, a staff member from the school, the superintendent.
It's a great point that you bring up, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, but my understanding is that the $3 million that's coming our way is purely for the town.
Right.
The Board of Ed is getting a different allotment.
Oh, there's a different,
And they will be putting together a very similar group that will run concurrently to this advisory group getting together to review the fund usage, but it would be separate.
okay, fine.
Okay, we think this is a good idea, that deserves a thumbs up as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, go forward. Last item under new business, a bid waiver for collection and assessment software. And you got some information just this evening, so I'll let Josh speak to that.
Sure thing. Thank you, Steve. We have been reviewing over the past several weeks, and Bruce can speak to this as well from his perspective, the collection and assessment software that the town has been using. And up to this point in time, we have been using software called GEMS from the company R. Walsh. And there have been some reports from within the staff that this is not necessarily meeting their needs, and a question has arisen of, is this the best software that we could find at a reasonable cost that is going to allow us to get the job done that we need to in the tax collection, the assessor's office, and the utility collector's office under Public Works, which is water and sewer. So as part of this, we've had a very robust team. We've had both assessors, the tax collector, the assistant tax collector, both utility collectors, Bruce here, Mark Douglas, our purchasing agent, as well as several members of, including Jim Rollins from Public Works, taking a look at this software, coming to meetings, putting their heads together about what's working well, what's not working well, and what some of the concerns are with transitioning from one software to another. I won't lie to you, I think it's been several years since any software has been reviewed within Town Hall. And I know that from my conversations with all of you, one of my charges coming in is to do my best to have my eyes on these items to make sure that our staff members have the resources that they need. And I've had many conversations with Bruce over the past few weeks that it may very well be that this is the best tool. What we're currently using, GEMS through our Walsh, may be the best tool for the job, but I believe that it requires a very thorough examination. That's something that we've been undertaking, and it's something that will continue later this week and into probably the next 2 or 3 weeks as we make some final decisions. My request to you tonight is to have a bid waiver as we decide, should we stay with the same program or should we not? Right now, there are only 3 or 4 different collection, and I say 3 or 4 because there are a number of acquisitions that have occurred over the past several years, and it's hard to determine, at least from my vantage point, who owns what softwares at this point in time. But there are either 3 or 4 different companies across the state of Connecticut that offer this software. There are other companies out in the wide world that offer collection software, but they're not tailored to Connecticut users, which is a serious detriment and very much limits the fields that we're working with right now. Right now, through this process, we are getting quotes from as many of those vendors as possible. Right now, we already have 2 in hand, and if we can get a third from a third vendor, then we will be sure to do so. But given that we've already contacted all of the different companies within the state, and given that this software requires not just a look at finances and not just a look at the numbers surrounding it, but also requires a level of very human interaction and a level of utility that can't be quantified through a bid process, I ask for this bid waiver.
Okay, would someone put forth that motion? Jack, thank you. And a second by Melissa. Okay, discussion. Candace, I know you hate bid waivers.
Well, I don't know that it's a bid waiver, you know, because there's no dollar amount involved. So to me, it's like you assess, you know, just like when we did for the software for the ordinances. You put out a bid, you assess three different organizations or whatever, whether it be user-friendly or cost or whatever, and you analyze the results, and then you make a selection. So I don't know if bid waiver's the right, you know, it's like you're just gonna make an assessment because you haven't gotten to the point where you're actually making a decision. So I don't know that a bid waiver is needed yet until you've evaluated the options. I don't know, you know. To me, a bid waiver is a dollar amount, you know.
But I think he wants to be able to move ahead if they find it.
I don't see it.
No, you're not wrong. Thank you, Melissa. Yes, but my hope is that in the next 2 weeks, it might take longer, but in the next 2 weeks, I would like to have the opportunity and the flexibility to make decisions on this item. Right now, the 2 quotes that we have are within $1,000 of each other on annual costs. That being said, there are upfront costs to any conversion, largely in training and the like,
Right.
that are one-time items. And those, of course, are increased over staying with the same software. But in terms of those annual continued costs, they are within $1,000 of each other.
Josh, I found it interesting in your note about the review process that only 9 towns in the state use the software that we have, but 150 other towns in the state use a software from QDS, which tells me that, is there a relationship here, or why? Is it 9 small towns? Is one company better for smaller towns than it is for larger towns? Do you have any of that evaluation?
I'll tell you that I've only worked before now in towns that have used QDS collection software. I'm not very familiar with it myself, nor am I very familiar with our Walsh software. But the towns that I've worked in include Waterford of 19,000 population, in Windsor of 29,000 population, and Bolton of 5,000. There's no correlation really between size. I know that if you ask any given user of R Walsh or you ask any given user of QDS, they'll give you very different pictures of why they decided to go with either of the two softwares, and I think that you'll get a different story about the qualities of each of those softwares. But I think there are pros and cons to each.
And your statement here says there are only about $1,000 difference that you have received so far in the cost.
In the annual cost.
In the
yes.
annual cost.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so I guess my 2 cents would be, I think we should take action on the motion to give you the kind of flexibility that may be important. Having said that, if we're ready for a vote, all in favor? Okay, it's unanimous?
Thank you.
There you go.
But at this point, you said, so in 2 weeks, you're expecting to make a decision?
I would hope so. There might be a need to delay a little further depending on how conversations go, but
The rollout
we have
would-
an opportunity
Well,
now.
the rollout would probably go in January, though, right?
The rollout where, if we were to move forward with a new software, the rollout of that software would possibly take place at the beginning of September. But in the meantime, there's a lot of data transition
Oh, for the
that would need to
for
happen.
the utility collection.
Right. September's kind of the perfect nexus of, we're just past the tax collection. It's just before our assessing items come due. And in terms of utility collection, I believe that that's a month that they have a little more free than others. It's the perfect storm.
Josh, will you come back to us at our next meeting and tell us the status of how that turned out?
I will.
What do you think? And I'm wondering, will you have your committees of those two ad hoc committees, memberships provided to us for the next meeting also?
Yes, and now that I'm thinking about it, perhaps there's a way that I can incorporate that detailed report within my manager's report within the agenda as it stands. So I'll think about how to best present that, and I'll make sure that I have it for the next meeting.
Fair enough, good.
Okay, with that having been done, we're ready for item 11, which is the second chance for citizen comments. John, you're all set for the evening, thank you. And if you're watching out there and would like to comment to the Board of Selectmen, the number to call is 860-738-6958. And so we'd like to hear from you now.
We have a phone nearby. I was wondering, do we have a phone here? Okay, can't see.
Okay, hearing none, I think we're ready to move on. Item 12 will be an executive session with our town attorney, who I believe, has joined us.
So moved. So moved? Sorry.
Wow, you're right on the stick there.
Sorry.
Yes, a motion to discuss strategy and negotiations for all pending claims of litigation, and inviting the town attorney and also the town manager and the finance director involved.
Do you want me here?
Kevin, do you feel that it would be helpful to have Bruce present for our conversation?
I don't need him, but it's up to, he thinks.
I'm not aware.
Most of the stuff is not.
It's up- it's really up to
I can let you get
you.
back to your evening. We can talk about it tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so who has the second on that motion? Linda, thank you. And so we're voting to go into executive session. All in favor? So be it.
So we can ask Kevin about the Republicans and the Democrats.
What's that?
We can ask Kevin about the Republicans and Democrats for the commission.
been a while since we've
I
seen.
know, huh?
Yeah.
Things have changed, but could use a little more change.
Is that turned off, Kevin?